Ladies and gentlemen, as Bitcoin tests $53,000, we have formed a triangle formation that will break within 24 hours, meaning Bitcoin could be breaking 53K or rejecting from it viciously within 24 hours. This is a big thing. We're at a crossroads here for Bitcoin, and it's hard to navigate as a trader and investor right now because the TA has taken a back seat for a while on Bitcoin. It's the ETF narrative that has been at the forefront of the price action. But in this video, I'm going to make some observations. I'm going to be telling you how I'm reacting to the situation, and hopefully you guys can get some use out of it. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get into it. Guys, before we get into the content today, go to Telegram and check out the VIP altcoin trading group. Not only do we have an altcoin trading group, we trade altcoins 3 to 4 times a week. We also have a 24/7 group chat where you can discuss the market with other VIP members. All the information is in the description below, in the information group linked below, including the trading results with a 78% win rate. We then have 2 exchanges that we advertise on the YouTube channel here, BingX and BitGet. BingX is global non-KYC with a VPN, so anywhere in the world you can access that exchange with an email and a password. And BitGet is global KYC minus the USA and Canada, so anywhere but the USA and Canada KYC. Both very low in trading fees, both never been hacked before. Check them out with my referral links down below for a 15% trading fee discount. And then finally, Become a Trader 10-unit course will teach you everything you need to know about trading. It is a 10-unit course for every type of learner, for every skill level of trader. Check all of those things out. Let's get into the very important video today. Guys, Bitcoin is actually in a particularly interesting position right now because the TA says one thing very distinctively, okay? The TA, in my opinion on Bitcoin, is mostly leaning bearish. It's mostly showing dramatic weakness here, right? But the problem is we have ETF narrative scrambling up the data. So let me show you what I mean exactly. We'll actually try and keep this video relatively brief because I understand that a lot of people are quite bored of this range at the moment. They want to see Bitcoin move again. We've gotten into a mindset over the last, let's say, 1 year, basically, right? Since around March 2023 was the last time we saw an actual downwards trend form on Bitcoin. Ever since then, it's basically been exclusively upwards. So for the last basically 1 year, let's say 11 months since March 2023, people have been leaning heavily towards the bullish bias, and specifically since September 11th, 2023, because that is when we saw the final low before the explosion that occurred in the Bitcoin price because of ETFs. In fact, in the last 5 months since the September 11th bottom, we've seen a 111% gain on Bitcoin, which is absolutely massive, especially for this part of the cycle. So Bitcoin is upwards. People are getting impatient. Let's get into the data that actually matters. Now Bitcoin is broken above 49K, which is our previous high, and we're testing a very major resistance zone. What is that resistance zone? That resistance zone is $53,000 US, right? You can see on the weekly chart, and I can show you on the daily chart as well. 53K is actually a major resistance as well, so let's just draw that in right now. But right now, the major resistance zone we're kind of testing right now lays between these red lines on the screen. Let's make this one green so you can distinguish between green and red. These red lines are a major macro resistance, and it's very clear to see why that is the case. In fact, if we look back to September 2021, we can see that's where we rejected from before the last leg up of the bull market, and we look back to December and January 2021 and 2022, we can see that that's where we rejected from before going downwards massively into the bear market. We have now reached that level again, and it's a clear weekly candle, weekly chart resistance level. It's a very strong resistance level. It's the strongest resistance level that Bitcoin has faced realistically since around 32K. Okay, so it's one of the stronger resistance levels on the Bitcoin chart. I actually think it's probably the second strongest resistance level Bitcoin has in this entire circle price region, the second strongest level. So very important. And right now, Bitcoin, of course, is running in a situation where it's seen already massive upside price movement. So a lot of people are speculating that we could see a rejection here. Now, I'm going to get into the short-term and medium-term data in a second because I have a lot to look at in short and medium term, but I want to give you cyclical context here. There is a macro trend on Bitcoin that we've discussed numerous times on this YouTube channel. In fact, my brain hurts even bringing it up again because I've spoken about it so many times here. But the macro trend, as you can see, basically says it depicts a clear picture. I'm not going to go too deep into it because I've said it so many times, but this trend on the screen here shows a clear picture. What does it say? It shows you that Bitcoin on cycle to cycle, right? And each cycle behaves in a very similar way structurally, right? We have these two yellow lines, right? One of them is dotted yellow. Once we get above that dotted yellow line, which is the bull market support line, by the way, as you can see in the circles, bull market support, bull market support, bull market support. Once we get above that line in the bear market or after the bear market, it takes about 2 months for us to go upwards and test the horizontal yellow line, okay? And when we test that horizontal yellow line, we generally see a resistance rejection, okay? We see a pre-halving correction. It happened in 2016. Okay, it happened in 2019. Not only did it happen on these two occasions, but the yellow line horizontally lined up with a horizontal retest of 67 on the daily chart RSI. So it's not just a coincidence, okay, and it's not just biased plotting of the chart. The fact of the matter is these horizontal resistance lines in yellow lined up perfectly with horizontal resistance lines on the RSI, and right now they are lining up perfectly with a horizontal resistance line on the RSI again, and quite closely with the yellow line as well. So right now we have a trend on Bitcoin, a macro trend that says that Bitcoin should reject from around this yellow line, around 49k, for a pre-halving correction. Now the only factor of that is a little bit abnormal is we're currently above 49k. We're actually sitting at around 52k right now. And so I've made the claim very clearly in previous videos, and I'll continue to make the claim. If Bitcoin sees a monthly candle close above 49,000 US dollars or breaks 53k, okay, whichever one of those happens, this macro trend will be broken and Bitcoin will be very likely to head further upwards. But until we see one of those things, right, a monthly candle close above 49k, which would be above the yellow horizontal line, or a break of 53k, this macro trend is still technically valid, and a possibility of a pre-halving correction that takes us downwards for a couple of months on Bitcoin or more is very much still on the table. So technically speaking, on a macro scale, due to this macro trend, which is an objective trend that you cannot deny, Bitcoin is still actually in danger. Okay, it's not out of the woodworks yet. And in order to get out of the woodworks, in order to get out of the woods, I should say, not the woodworks, we need to be breaking that 53k level. And as we can see on the weekly chart, we're testing it right now. And as we can see on the daily chart, we're actually struggling to get above it. So we can look at the daily chart right now. We can see a very clear descending volume as the price moves upwards. We can see many patterns on a horizontal basis at this resistance zone, which is not generally a good sign. Now, you could make the argument that right now, if we're just forgetting about, you know, this conglomeration of lines, you could make the argument that Bitcoin is seeing some sort of bullish pennant formation, whatever it may be there. You could make that argument, Bitcoin seeing a bullish pennant formation, but you also could make the argument that Bitcoin seeing a double top at resistance. So I don't think either of those arguments really stands particularly strong. What we can say, though, is that there are valid lines here, and these valid lines do form a structure that comes to an apex around the 22nd of February, meaning that probably within the next 24 hours, Bitcoin will be making a decision. It will either be moving upwards above 53k, or it will be rejecting downwards towards 49k once again. Within 24 hours, we'll make that decision. Now, I can tell you right now what the short-term TA says. The short-term TA, as shown by the daily chart volume, as seen by very clear bearish divergence on the hourly chart, on the 4-hourly chart, 8-hourly chart, 12-hourly chart, any of the charts you want to look at right now, as seen by descending volume on the hourly chart. You know, all of these things are showing you quite clearly, as seen, by the way, by funding rates. You can go to the funding rates and you can see every single funding rate here, aside from like 4 of them, right? Across massive assets in cryptocurrency, across massive coins, the top 25 coins, across all the exchanges, pretty much all of the funding rates are pretty heavily positive right now, which is generally a sign that the market needs to be flushed out of longs, okay? The longs are going to get liquidated. That is generally what high funding rates mean. Just like when you see a massive period of low funding rates, you generally see the shorts get liquidated. When you see high funding rates like what we're seeing right now, it means the longs are very susceptible to liquidation. It doesn't mean they need to get liquidated, but it does mean in situations like this, you sometimes see a situation, and often actually see a situation where the price pumps up very, very, very quickly, okay? And then, or at least, sorry, it drops down very, very quickly and liquidates all the longs, right? That's what happens in situations like this quite often. So I wouldn't say the short-term TA is leaning bullish right now at all. I'd say it's actually showing quite significant weakness. The only thing I can really point to on the short-term TA that looks good is potentially this structure here, which is technically a bullish pennant formation, regardless of how you draw it. But I don't think that's necessarily enough to be jumping into longs. I think at the very least, you want to be waiting to see whether 53k breaks, waiting to see whether this upward structure breaks downwards. You know, we do have a macro trend here that is at stake. If you're going to be, you know, getting into the habit of buying Bitcoin at major macro resistance while at the potential jeopardy of rejecting from a macro trend, you know, that's not really the safest time you can be buying Bitcoin. You know, that's just objectively true. So I think right now we're facing yet another situation where Bitcoin is at a very critical level, very important level. We need to break 53K if we're going to head further upwards. If we do not break 53K, the longer we stay below it, the more likely it becomes that Bitcoin sees a significant correction. I am not really of the opinion that correction will take us below at an absolute maximum of 35K, right? And I want to make myself very clear. I'm not predicting a correction here, okay? I'm not comfortable making predictions here. What I'm doing is observing what's happening with charts. I'm observing the fact that the macro trend still exists. It's not quite invalidated yet. And I'm observing the fact that TA at the same time has not really been as reliable as it's been in the past since September. And so it's very difficult to make predictions. What I can do is make observations, okay? The observation is Bitcoin is at risk. It's not out of the woods yet. And we need to treat it as such, right? All we need to do for Bitcoin to be in a bullish situation, right? Clear of all this, but in regards to a pre-halving correction, is a clear break of 53K, and it becomes very likely that Bitcoin from that point will go to all-time highs within a couple of months or maybe 3 months, okay? Right now, we are still in danger for Bitcoin, unfortunately. We have not cleared that danger yet. There are many good signs on Bitcoin. Unfortunately, some of the good signs are unmeasurable, like ETFs, for example. ETFs on Bitcoin have been, undeniably, probably the biggest driving force of Bitcoin's price action over the last 6 months. Okay, it's ETFs that led this entire rally, pretty much. It's ETFs, the narrative of ETFs, and now the actual existence of ETFs that has led this entire price action to the upside. You know, we saw the narrative of ETFs just dragging Bitcoin to the upside for months on end without correction. You know, we saw slow grind to the upside. Every single drop was bought up so quickly. People were just not willing to sell. And now we have a situation where the actual existence of ETFs has just pumped Bitcoin massively to the upside. We can see, go through the data here. We can see that spot ETF inflows, if we go through the all-time history of them, every single day except for 5 days or 6 days of the existence of spot ETFs has been positive inflows, averaging, $300 million going into Bitcoin just from spot ETFs. We now have BlackRock owning 0.5% of the entire supply of Bitcoin. The entire circulating supply of Bitcoin owned by BlackRock, 0.5%. In just like a month of the ETFs being released, the amount of buying that's going on of ETFs is just huge, and no one is really selling, aside from Grayscale, and Grayscale is slowing down in their selling. So spot ETFs are pretty much just taking every single bearish structure and skewing it bullish right now. And it's very difficult as an analyst who focuses on TA to know when that will end. And so I will be fully transparent with you right now, and I will say that I have not been focusing on Bitcoin short-term at all for months now. My personal trades, and pretty much every single analyst I know for the most part, has not been focusing their trades on Bitcoin short-term for 3-4 months because there's no point in doing so. The short-term TI on Bitcoin has been contaminated by ETFs. It does not work anymore. What does work is resistance and support levels. As you can see, even though the contamination of the short-term TI has been kind of very difficult to deal with, we still have these support levels and resistance levels very clearly acting as support and resistance. The last 3 retests of these levels are very, very easy and very easily distinguishable. Resistance retest, break out of that resistance, straight up to the nearest resistance, rejection from that, bounce off support, come upwards again, break the resistance, come to a new resistance, testing it right now. So it's not like TA doesn't matter. It's not like you shouldn't look at it. It still works in a sense of level to level structural basis, but in terms of these short-term patterns, in terms of like, oh, there's a bearish divergence on the hourly chart RSI, I'm going to go ahead and say it really doesn't matter right now. Just quite frankly, it doesn't. And so in a way, all of the short-term analysis I've done in this video kind of akins to nothing. It kind of comes to nothing. What really matters right now is this macro trend. Do we close the monthly candle above 49K? Do we break 53K? Those are the things that matter right now. Because I can tell you right now, as I said, the short-term TA on Bitcoin has been a casino for the last few months. And I don't necessarily see how it will stop being a casino anytime soon. Right now, I'm focusing more on medium-term structures. And it's not like you can't focus on medium-term structures. It's the medium-term structures that allowed me to predict this rejection at 49K while we were at 48K. I said we're going to reject. We rejected from 49K. My first target was 38.5. We reached that within 2 weeks. So it's not like you can't do TA based on medium-term structures. It's just a lot harder and there's a lot less guidance. Right now, Bitcoin is in a very, pretentious is the right word, very annoying situation, and we just have to wait and see. Thankfully, as I said, the pennant formation whether we break upwards or downwards in short term is going to be breaking within a day. And thankfully, the monthly close is just in 9 days. And look, if this pennant formation is breaking within a day, we could even be above 53K tomorrow. We'll have to wait and see. I don't simply know. If we are, then that's good news for Bitcoin. It very much damages this macro trend. And if we reject downwards, that could be extra validation that this macro trend will in fact play out and we will in fact go down for a pre-halving correction on Bitcoin. Unfortunately, the overall premise of my Bitcoin videos over the past couple of weeks has been one of confusion and mystery. I'm just trying to observe what's actually happening rather than make concrete predictions, because I don't think the data is actually there at this point to make concrete predictions. A lot of people are going to be upset by that. Doesn't really matter if you're upset. That's just the reality. You can try and make predictions all you want. If you don't have the data to make them, they're not going to work for you. What I can do is observe reality and react to reality, because it's reactions that make you money, not necessarily predictions. So guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Bitcoin here. Again, 24 hours into a short-term breakout, getting very close to a long-term breakout in validation of that macro trend, or getting very close to a follow of that macro trend. Remember, the trend is your friend until it ends. That doesn't mean we need to be jumping into short positions, but it does mean we need to be caring about it before buying at major macro resistance at a major top of a macro trend. We can't just be jumping into huge positions here. It's not logical, guys. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.